thank you very much for the opportunity to present Composing Eaten Alive, exploring the intersection of climate change and global fish production through sonification. My name is Brian Lindgren, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Virginia in the Music Composition and Computer Technologies program. This presentation will give an overview of a piece I composed, Eaten Alive, for string quintet, tape, and effects processing. This composition examines the intersection between climate change and global fish production. The piece also includes audio clips of news reports and scientists over the past 60 years that narrate this history. The process of composing the piece unfolded through, first, gathering existing research and describing the relationship between these two phenomena. 2, developing the conceptual framework and sourcing the relevant data sets. 3, programming a sonification tool to assist in the composing process. And lastly, composing Eaten Alive. Like many of you here, over the years I've become increasingly concerned by the number of reports on the declining health of the ocean and, paired with climate change, what that might mean for the future. The causes and potential solutions to this catastrophe are many, and yet, as someone who has tried to keep a pulse on this issue over the years, I was perplexed why the ocean, one of the Earth's major carbon sinks, seldom finds itself at the center of mainstream discussion. Sylvia Earle, former chief scientist of the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, shared, quote, "Disregard for the ocean as the primary driver of climate and weather might be forgiven 50 years ago, but now we know. The living ocean governs planetary chemistry, regulates temperature, generates most of the oxygen in the sea and atmosphere, powers the water, carbon, and nitrogen cycles, and holds 97% of Earth's water and 97% of the biosphere. Quite simply, no ocean, no life, no blue, no green. If not for the ocean, there would be no climate to discuss or anyone around to debate the issues. Since the 1950s, half of the coral reefs, much of the phytoplankton, and 90% of many kinds of fish in the sea, sharks, tunas, swordfish, marlin, cod, halibut, and many other kinds of ocean wildlife have been extracted as commodities. While fishing to feed populations and sustain economies is critical, technologies have been applied to finding, catching, and marketing ocean wildlife on a scale that is both unprecedented and unsustainable. The ocean has also been a place to discard our wastes, now coming back to haunt us with hundreds of toxic dead zones. Now we know the ocean is not too big to fail." End quote. For a composer, data sonification techniques can be useful in bringing awareness to specific issues through music. Eaten Alive is conceived as a fixed media video performance, common for the music created during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns. It is scheduled to premiere at the Technosonics Festival at the University of Virginia in February 2023. I decided that the climate data, or dataset 1, would be represented in the frequency or pitch domain. Specific global regions are assigned to each instrument. Because this work is intended to depict the harm that global fish extraction enacts on the oceans and the planet, fish production, dataset 2, is represented by a spectral EQ and delay effects processing which, when applied to the recorded string quintet, would degrade the fidelity of the recordings. That is to say, the greater the amount of fishing, the greater the degradation of the string quintet sound. One of the challenges when sonifying data that is sampled at periodic intervals is that when musically represented, its rhythm sounds like a barrage of repeated notes. In order to create rhythmic variation, a pure data patch, which I call data bump, was created that would average data samples into longer notes, thereby creating the possibility for sustained notes of varying lengths. This flowchart generally describes the data bump workflow. First, starting on the left, the data is sourced and scaled. Then dataset 1 is sonified as note pitch, and this is where most of the composing within data bump happens. Next, the notes are exported to notation software to create a score, which is then recorded. Finally, the audio is imported back into DataBump and effects processing is applied based on data set 2. To correlate this in the DataBump GUI, the sonifying of dataset 1 as pitch happens here, and the sonifying of dataset 2 happens here. In addition, DataBump was designed with 3 main functions in mind. First, to average data points together, thereby creating notes of varying lengths. Here you can see that each averaging window results in one longer note. Second is a variable data playback rate. In effect, some months and years within the context of this particular data would pass by slower or faster than others. In a film, for example, the dramatic plot might span many years. However, the director may choose to spend more time focusing on certain time spans than others. Third, DataBump is a track-based automation system. The averaging methods, window size, and data playback rate can all be automated. The data playback rate is set by a main automation lane, and each instrument is assigned to 2 automation lanes. The first is the average window size, and the second is the averaging mode. Automation is integral to this compositional approach. Averaging modes, window sizes, and data playback rate can be continually changing, thereby creating a dynamic composition while faithfully representing the data. After the initial preparation and building the software, the next step was to begin composing Eaten Alive. The software performed its primary task well. DataBump allowed for a focused and streamlined composition process. Working with the automation lanes felt natural, and I was able to get in the zone. As with any artistic process, there is a back and forth response between the artist and the medium. At the outset of the composition process, the sound of the raw data evoked certain feelings. Consonant harmonies at some moments and dissonant harmonies at others, giving emotional feelings teetering between suspense and resolution. DataBump was used to contour longer notes that accentuated these harmonic qualities. As the composing process unfolded, the raw data was shaped using automation to create longer averaged notes. This allowed for both sparsely spaced notes, which depicted feelings of uncertainty reflected in the awareness of climate change at that time, and also longer phrases that created a gradual dramatic unfolding as the composition developed. To conclude, I'd like to share a few minutes of Eaten Alive.
But it's climate change creating infernos larger than ever, with vortex of smoke powerful enough to spawn their own weather systems. The unimaginable is becoming routine.
We're seeing hot days and heat waves like we've never seen before, and then the wind is just a formula for disaster.
Fire Chief Brian Fennessy and his crew say what's already been lost is devastating, but what's still at risk is mind-boggling.
These fires are moving at such speed that it's exceeding all the models that we've used for decades. We're trying to gauge fire spread. Hearing all the time from citizens, I didn't think the fire was going to get here that quickly.
I hope hope you enjoyed, and please feel free to get in touch with me anytime, and thank you for your attention today.